This morning, your patent sold for a hefty sum. My manager phoned me out of the blue and ushered me into the corridor before saying something completely absurd. What do you mean by that? I apologize. Do you mean the patent I received from my former employer? The ridiculousness of it all perplexed me, but I chose to listen with a half-hearted attitude. It must have been a lie. That's the one, indeed. However, why did you join this organization? Why did you come here from your prior employer? Lisa, a female employee, rushed up at that moment. The CEO has called, said boss. He wants you to give him a call back right away. Really? Did he mention the subject? He made no mention of details. The CEO simply insisted that it was urgent. I had an instinct when I heard this. Something must have come to light, and it had become a serious issue. With a mumble, "You've lost everything now," and slipped closer. Hey, what's going on here? Boss, the CEO is waiting. Boss snapped his tongue in frustration. Then Lisa flashed a short smile before glaring at me, and rushed away after saying that. Typical office worker at 41. Other child. I enjoyed playing outside with friends from elementary school until the beginning of middle school. I started to consider high school. I found that I was suddenly really interested in science and math. Although it was difficult at first, I persisted, worked hard in my studies, and eventually was accepted to the high school of my choosing. Sciences for college, studying diligently and without interruptions to pass the entrance examinations. Research in the lab alongside like-minded colleagues. But I found that quiet, purely cerebral pursuits were insufficient. In order to maximize my time, I also worked part-time whenever possible, working in cafes, the kitchen, and as a waitress at a beer pub. It was wonderful to be among energetic individuals. It brought back memories of my active early years. Even while I liked dealing with people, I also believed that since I had advanced this far in a science degree, I should apply the abilities I had acquired via study in my work. I therefore looked for work options appropriately and selected a sock manufacturing company from a number of offers. I worked in R&D and got a patent 7 years later. Although it wasn't enough to make me wealthy, it was a tiny achievement that made me feel accomplished. But it also brought with it a nagging feeling of ennui. I came to the realization that I would only grow more disinterested and deteriorate if I kept working at this job. I continued to work in the same position for 5 more years in spite of this realization. However, I made the decision to change occupations one day and accepted a position in sales, which is a totally different industry. It was confusing and full of obstacles at first, but now that I'm in my 7th year, even though it can still be difficult at times, I find it to be fascinating and think it was a wise career choice. I was promoted to assistant manager last year, who came with pride and additional responsibility. Tom, the head of the department, called me one day to inquire about something. Tom was a veteran who had worked for the corporation exclusively for 25 years. He was one of the sales managers when I started, but 4 years ago, he was elevated to the position of head of the sales division. However, it's unlikely that he gained it via actual skill. Did he subtly overthrow his competitors to gain that position? His patronizing demeanor and incredibly self-centered actions for a leader are evident. I thought he was talking to the contract when he inquired about the topic that was scheduled for next month, so I responded appropriately. Yes, we are scheduled to finalize the contract in the middle of next month. What? Not this month, but next month. That schedule has been the basis of our planning. Chris, you need to have brought that up sooner. Are you being lazy? I nearly shot back that I wasn't being lazy, but refrained. I kept blinking as I thought about what the boss had said. We'd have talked about this topic before. I had previously told him that next month would see the finalization of the deal. I remember saying that quite vividly. Is he acting to trick me, or is he simply forgetting? After about 15 minutes, our companions left the table, and it was just Catherine and me. I pondered on what to say next as I carefully admired her face. She looked even prettier than in her photos. Alex, there's something I wanted to ask first. Oh, what is it? Alex, have you ever been on an arranged date before? Before I was actually thinking of asking her the same thing. I told her it was my first time and asked if it was her first as well. She also said it was her first with someone as charming as me. I'm surprised you'd need to go on an arranged date. Wouldn't you have plenty of suitors? Oh, you're too kind, she said, her tone gentle. But Catherine gave me a stern look. She probably thought I was being insincere, and I got a little worried, but that assertive side of hers was quite attractive to me. Did I say something you didn't like? I wasn't trying to butter you up, honestly. I then shared with her about my long-term relationship ending due to a job in another state, how I came back to the headquarters, got this arranged date offer from my department head, and how her photo made me want to meet her. At first, I laughed at the idea of an arranged date, but it's just another way to meet people. Even those group dates I went to when I was younger felt like group arranged dates. As I continued to share, Catherine's expression softened. You broke up with your previous girlfriend 3 years ago, right? When? In September. Sometime in September, I guess, I answered. Curious, Catherine smirked. Actually, I broke up with my long-term boyfriend in September 3 years ago, too. I was at a loss for words at Catherine's unexpected confession. Did you get over your ex? Jess? Of course. And you? She asked. A long time ago, I said, smiling. I couldn't help but smile, too. And so our arranged date came to an end, and we agreed to meet again the following weekend. I was so eager to see Catherine again that I felt restless the entire week. Every night after work, I'd think about what to wear. Never one to care much about fashion, I was quite indecisive. As I was looking through my closet, I decided on a suit without a tie. Then a thought popped into my head. What about underwear? I quickly came back to my senses. I'm such an idiot. Worrying about that was way too premature for our first date. We met at 4 p.m. near an established department store close to the hotel where we had our arranged date. We planned to stroll around town for a bit and then find a decent restaurant for dinner. I could have booked a place in advance, but since I didn't know Catherine's preferences, I thought we'd decide on the go. Of course, I did some research and had shortlisted a few places that seemed good. I'd arrived in town over an hour earlier than our scheduled time and checked the location of the restaurant I had in mind. After doing that, I went to the place where I was supposed to meet her. But even after our 4:00 p.m. meeting time, she was nowhere in sight. 10 minutes passed, then 20. I thought she might have stood me up. I was about to give up and head home when, while crossing the street, I thought of calling her to express my frustration. Then, from the other side of the intersection, I spotted her walking towards me with her cell phone in one hand. She noticed me too and waved enthusiastically. I rushed toward her, and we both stopped right in the middle of the crossing. I was thinking of calling you and heading home because you were so late, I said. I was there too. I was waiting for you right on time over there, she replied, pointing to our meeting spot. Suddenly, she burst out laughing. The pedestrian crosswalk signal started flashing with a beeping sound, and we both ran back to the sidewalk. Alex, were you waiting over there? She asked. I looked back at the beer hall named Penguin that she pointed to and silently nodded. I was here. I was waiting here. What she pointed out ahead was the department store we had chosen as our rendezvous point. Right in front of its entrance stood the department store symbol, a penguin statue. In other words, we had agreed to meet by the penguin in front of the department store. However, I mistook it for a beer hall named Penguin across the street from the department store, while Catherine thought of it as the penguin symbol at the entrance of the store. That's a funny mix-up. Glad we didn't miss each other, she said. Yeah, seriously. Now that I think about it, I'm thirsty. How about we grab a drink at that beer hall to pay our respects to the penguin? Sounds good. Let's do it. Because it was a weekend, the beer hall was already nearly 80% full, even though it was just before 5:00 p.m. We ordered a big pint of draft beer and some hot dogs to snack on. We had another good laugh about the penguin confusion and then started sharing more about ourselves. It turns out the station nearest to Catherine's old place, and where I used to live up until 3 years ago, was the same. There were 3 lines at that station, but we both used the same one for our daily commute. I always bought a sports newspaper from the kiosk in the mornings. You mean the kiosk on the far west side of the platform? I asked. Yes, that's the one, she replied. As I nodded, Catherine mentioned she frequented that kiosk too. She always bought an energy drink there. I remembered I hadn't noticed her face, but I had seen a woman buying that drink several times. When I guessed the brand of her energy drink, Catherine looked at me in surprise. Did you ever bump hands with someone when paying? I asked. Still in shock, Catherine nodded. I checked her commuting times. Our schedules overlapped. We might have met at that kiosk at the station. I felt a strange connection with Catherine, and we planned another date for the following weekend. For our second date, we managed to meet on time without getting the location wrong. We had a meal at a casual diner and then shared a drink at a relaxed bar. I was quite the drinker, but she could hold her own as well. The conversation shifted to hobbies. I mentioned that, while I hadn't been into it recently, I used to be really into watching plays a few years ago. I'm talking about small-time theater groups putting on shows at little venues, not anything big. I didn't particularly have a favorite troupe. I'd just randomly attend a theater, pick up a flyer, and if it piqued my interest, I'd go watch that play. Next, it was the same old story. Depending on the play I went to see, sometimes it was fascinating, other times it was a letdown. The hits and misses varied greatly. I started mentioning the names of the troupes I remembered, saying, this one was a hit, that one was a miss, and another was a complete dud. You've probably never heard of these troupes, I said. Ever since I began talking about the theater companies, Catherine seemed to speak less. I wondered if I bored her with topics she wasn't interested in. I do know one of those troupes, she said suddenly. Really? That one? The total dud? I asked. I thought that company was as obscure as it gets. You know about such a company? I asked after a brief pause. She made a sour face and said that the theater group, it's the one my ex, who I broke up with 3 years ago, was involved in. I was taken aback and cleared my throat. In situations like this, should I take back what I said about being way off? Or should I dig myself deeper? While I was at a loss for words, she spoke up first. I think I was there at the theater when you came to watch. I was helping out at the ticket counter. Well, I'm not so sure about that, I said. I remember arriving just in the nick of time that day, barely making it for the show. Our second date ended on an awkward note, yet we made plans to meet again the following weekend. Our third date began with a walk in a park in New York, known for its beautiful cherry blossoms in the spring. I used to come here often for company picnics, I said. I've been here a few times with friends. I decided not to ask who those friends were. It might get awkward again if they were from the theater group. Although it wasn't cherry blossom season, the park was adorned with various flowers. Admiring flowers wasn't really my thing, so I quickly grew bored of the walk. Suddenly, carried by the wind, a savory aroma wafted towards us. It was coming from a food stand a little further ahead. That smells delicious, she whispered. Hearing her, I turned to look at her. I'm sorry. I've always been more of a pie than flowers person. Shrugging and smiling quickly, I added, to be honest, I was getting a bit bored looking at the park greenery. How about we go get some hot dogs? Nodding in agreement, we walked briskly towards the food stall, our hips swaying as if we were race walkers. We bought a hot dog each and a can of beer, then sat on a nearby bench. We idly watched families playing on the park's grass, couples, and people walking their dogs. taking a sip of the beer and a bite of the hot dog. Suddenly, I noticed a particularly large cherry tree right next to the bench we were sitting on. Oh, I think it was around here that time. Was it the year before I transferred out of state, or the year before that? I had a company picnic around here. Glancing around, I noticed a public restroom to our back left. It was definitely here. A new guy was in charge of securing the spot for a cherry blossom party. He told us that it was right in front of the restroom. I remember yelling at him, wondering why he'd picked such a smelly spot. That's thoughtful of him. When you're drinking, it's convenient to be close to the restroom, right? She said. She had a point, though I doubted that newbie had thought that far ahead when choosing the spot. Speaking of which, I once came here for a picnic and witnessed a fight between two guys over the restroom line. I had a similar experience, she said. Was it in this park? Yes, it was this park. It might have even been that restroom. I paused for a moment, remembering. When I asked about the situation at that time, a young man who looked like a heavily intoxicated college student tried to cut in line for the restroom. A middle-aged man in a suit who was in line confronted the young man. Then a scuffle ensued. That's when another man, who seemed to be an acquaintance of the man in the suit, rushed over and managed to defuse the situation. Listening to her story, the memory of that time vividly came back to me. That man in the suit was my director, and the guy who stepped in later, that was me. Yours truly. You're kidding. You were there that day? She asked, surprised. Both of us were surprised and impressed by the unexpected connection from our past. A few days later, after work, my director invited me for a drink. We went to our usual large bar. As soon as we sat down, my director said, "How's it going with your arranged date? I heard you've met her a couple of times." I wasn't sure how to respond. I believe I had a good relationship with her. However, we had only been on 3 dates. I was indeed attracted to her, and I wanted to believe that she had some affection for me as well, but it was uncertain how things would turn out in the future. I talked to her, and it turns out we've knowingly crossed paths before, I shared. Upon hearing this, my director had a pleased expression on his face, as if to suggest it was a perfect match. Sounds like fate, doesn't it? Suddenly, a thought flashed through my mind. What if she's in this bar tonight too? There had been a few times in the past when we unexpectedly ran into each other, but if we met in this bar tonight, it wouldn't just be a coincidence, it might be destiny. I excused myself to him, saying I needed to use the restroom, and started searching the expansive bar. It was a tavern near the office, and it wasn't surprising to see familiar faces. However, there were mostly strangers. That's to be expected, I thought, especially in a bustling city like New York. What were the odds of running into that one woman? Conveniently, I decided to give up on the silly fantasy and return to where my boss was seated. Just as I was about to turn around. "There you are," she said, standing right in front of me. "It's a coincidence, isn't it?" she remarked. I shook my head and replied, "Does it really feel like just a coincidence to you?" She stared back at me with a broad smile on her face. I'm employed at a store inside a big medical facility. I was usually happy at work and didn't have any specific grievances. I came onto a disturbance one evening while I was strolling around the hospital for a little smattering. A hospitalized child appeared to have begun to suffer. I observed a fresh female physician having trouble performing a challenging intubation. She was unable to do it because her hands were shaking. I snatched the tube from her after assessing the situation. "I can do this. Let me try." An unexpected turn of events occurred when I successfully finished the treatment as she watched in amazement. John is my name. I'm a normal 35-year-old man who might be found anywhere in the nation. I work in a store as a staff member. Despite being a store, it is not the same as a supermarket or convenience store. The store is housed inside a New York hospital. Patients and those who accompany inpatients frequent this sizable hospital. Early in the morning and right before closing, the store is frequented not only by patients, but also by physicians and nurses from the same hospital. The store is frequently packed with customers wearing white coats. $10, please. A senior nurse came to buy her food during noon. She grabbed a tiny pastry, a bottle of tea, and a sandwich. She appeared to have a sweet tooth, which is somewhat problematic for a medical professional. She finally gave in to her urges and purchased these. Your change is right here. I gave her the change after calling her up and bagging her belongings. Taking it, she linked the coins in her clasp wallet. Along with her purchases, she placed the receipt in the bag. As she moved away from the register, she muttered, "Thank you." I also said, "Thank you," while I watched her back. It might sound like a line from a screenplay, almost robotic, but I really did mean it from the bottom of my heart. "Please, can I have this?" "Okay, give me a minute." A young boy was the next person at the register. He is most certainly an inpatient because he was dressed in hospital attire. With a robot and a monster toy in his tiny hands, he appeared to be around 5 years old. A small woman, most likely the boy's mother, stood behind him. Both items cost $10 in total. "This is yours." On the tray, she laid a $10 bill. We have a store inside the hospital where we sell food and toys for different requirements. Hospitals aren't really enjoyable, and they may be extremely frightening for kids. We make an effort to provide a range of considerate products to make their difficult times a little bit easier. Exactly $10. Your receipt is here. I gave him the gifts and she the receipt. "Thank you very much." He thanked me with a bright smile and a lively voice. "Please come again." Cheered up by his energy, I waved goodbye to them with a smile. And so I work at the shop like this. It's primarily a standing job, which can be quite tiring, but there are energetic kids like the boy earlier who share their energy with me. But then again, this is a hospital. It's not uncommon for children to become scared and start crying. A baby being held by his mother in the line for the register started crying loudly. "Oh dear, he's gotten fussy," I thought to myself as I worked through the line, eventually reaching this mother and child. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." The mother apologized to those around her, looking embarrassed despite her talking to and gently rocking the baby, who seemed about a year old. There was no sign he was going to stop crying anytime soon. "It's okay. It's a baby's job to cry after all." I reassured her while scanning the items in her basket. The baby continued to cry the whole time. The surrounding glances gathered, and she looked even more apologetic. All right, time for my secret weapon. After finishing scanning the items, I handed over the change and the receipt. Right after that, I pulled out a pinwheel from under the counter. It was a pinwheel made of plastic film attached to a handle. "Look, it goes round and round." I spun the pinwheel in front of the crying baby. Sniffling, he looked at it curiously. On his arm, I noticed a hospital band with the hospital's name, the room number, and the name Michael Brown. It seems he's one of the kids admitted here. Round and round, round and round. As I kept blowing on it to make it spin, he became interested in the pinwheel. His face lit up with a smile, a stark contrast to his earlier crying, and he reached out his hands towards it, giggling. "This one's on the house. Here you go." "Thank you so much. I'm so sorry." After I gave the pinwheel as a gift, she expressed her gratitude with a shrinking demeanor. It's rare these days to meet someone so humble. I sent them off with a smile, impressed and glad that didn't escalate. The line at the register ended with that family. Another staff member was taking care of restocking. It looked like I could take a breather for now. Just then, a woman rushed up to me. I thought she wanted to pay, but she didn't seem to be holding any items. That was amazing. He stopped crying so quickly. She's a doctor from this hospital, wearing a blue scrub topped with a white coat. She had a red name tag hanging around her neck. I remember she's the new doctor who recently joined. I'm a doctor, but kids get scared of me. They start crying, saying, "Mule, scary face." She laughed, scratching her cheek. Despite her lovely smile, there's nothing particularly frightening about her. She's probably just so focused on her work as a doctor that her face stiffens up on the spot. That must be tough. Glancing at her name tag, I saw emergency medicine written on it. I see working in emergency medicine means dealing with a wide range of ages, from adults to children. She might also struggle with issues like she mentioned. I'm not exactly a favorite among children. Without little tricks like them, I'd be at a loss. Saying this, I pulled out a plastic bag from under the counter to show her. Inside, there were several pinwheels, paper-made toys, and candies. All of these are intended for situations like the one earlier. That's not true at all, she said, shaking her head and denying my words. You're always loved by everyone, kids and elders alike. As a cashier in the store, her eyes sparkled as she looked straight at me. The intensity was overwhelming, and I couldn't help but feel taken aback. Really? You think so? Yes, absolutely. The nurses say they find your service comforting. I'm envious of that skill, she said with a slight laugh. Then, with a graceful motion, she picked up a ham sandwich and a can of coffee near the register and placed them on the counter. Could you please check these out for me? Feeling awkward about being praised for my customer service, which I hadn't given much thought to, I went ahead and processed her purchase as usual. I made a point of sticking to my routine while handling her transaction. It felt like I was being audited. Feeling oddly tense, I bagged her items and handed them over. She smiled again, expressing her gratitude. Thank you very much. As she was about to leave the register, flipping her lab coat, she stopped and turned back to me. All right. My name is Olivia Smith. Let's have a chat again sometime. Sure, I'm John. After exchanging names, she waved contentedly and left the shop. Well, that's an interesting connection. I've already got someone special in my heart. I just hope this interaction with the beautiful doctor doesn't lead to any strange rumors. With that thought, I resumed my work as if to dismiss such arrogant notions. Since that day, Dr. Smith has made a point of greeting me every time she visits the shop. It's not unwelcome, and having a bit of non-work-related chat is a nice break. This had been the case for some time, but she engages with other customers in line, either initiating conversations or responding to them. No dessert today. That's right. It would be too much to have it every day. This was the veteran nurse who seems to have finally overcome her cravings. Dr. Smith gets along well with her too. Her communication skills are impressively high, making her fit into the workplace so well that it's hard to believe she's a newcomer. Thank you for always keeping it clean. Much appreciated. Not at all, doctor. You too. Hello. No classes at the university today. Hello. I have a late lecture today. She greets everyone with a smile, from the janitors cleaning the hallways to the university students working part-time in the shop. Hey, cut on the job. Don't get too carried away. One night, just as it was about to become a new day, I had some errands in the pediatric ward. As I walked down the hallway towards my destination, I noticed an unusual noise for the late hour. What's going on? Prioritizing the commotion over my own errand, I headed towards the source of the voices. Approaching, I realized the noises were coming from a particular room. This situation didn't seem normal. Michael. When I got about 10 meters away from the room where the commotion was happening, I saw a woman sprinting around the corner of the hallway at full speed. Wait, haven't I seen her somewhere? Michael. Hang in there. The next thing I heard was Dr. Smith's voice. She was driven by anxiety, a stark contrast to her usual demeanor. Excuse me for a moment. Curious, I peeked into the center of the commotion and saw several doctors and nurses treating a child. A familiar red windmill was decorated at the patient's bedside. I see the person from earlier in the store, Michael. It must be Michael who visited the store yesterday. Of course, I'm concerned for anyone in distress, but it's especially worrying when it's a familiar face. Without thinking, I reflexively jumped into the hospital room. Michael. Michael. Dr. Smith's frantic shouts caught my attention. Her hands were trembling, and it seemed like she couldn't maintain her usual composure. Dr. Smith was pale and confused, holding a thin tube in her hands. Excuse me for a moment. I snatched some documents related to Michael from a nearby nurse. Hey, who are you? The surprised nurse's words didn't reach my ears. I skimmed through the file. Michael had asthma and was hospitalized for it. The tube won't fit. Dr. Smith was struggling, and Michael seemed to be in pain. He had a cup-like cough, and epiglottitis was suspected. No wonder she was having trouble with intubation. The swelling narrows the trachea, requiring a certain level of skill. Nurse, please call a pediatrician immediately. Yes. With no time to worry about the sudden outsider, the nurse dashed off, ignoring me, but would help arrive in time. In such a condition, breathing difficulties could arise at any moment. Actually, he might already be experiencing them. Thinking this made me restless, and I impulsively called out to Dr. Smith. Let me try. I can do it. Why are you here? She seemed not to have noticed my entrance, focused as she was on the situation at hand. Let me try. Even though you say that, John, you work in the store, right? Quickly, Michael is still suffering. Dr. Smith was even more confused by my words. Indeed, I work at the store. Well, no wonder she's confused. I have a medical license. I almost violently took the tube from Dr. Smith, who stood there frozen. Then I proceeded to insert it into the trachea of Michael, who was in distress. It was significantly swollen, indeed challenging. Without real field experience, it would be tough to manage. Well, John, you don't just stand there admiring. Get the medication and oxygen ready. After completing the intubation, I urgently directed her and the remaining nurses. I could feel their questioning glances, wondering who I was, but time was of the essence. It seemed like everyone there shared a sense of urgency. A little while later, his condition seemed to have improved slightly. The peak of his distress had passed, and his coughing was gradually subsiding. Just then, the nurse who had dashed out earlier burst back in. Dr. Wilson, over here. Oh, the pediatrician. Dr. Wilson entered the room, and when he saw me, his eyes widened. It also seemed like he gave a slight smile at the same time. I'll take over from here. He stood by Michael's side and quickly assessed the situation. Then he continued speaking to me. Thank you, John. His treatment continued. As an experienced doctor, his skills were evident. Each action was quick yet precise, and his instructions to the nurses were clear. Let's leave the rest to him. Yes, encouraged Dr. Smith. We both left the room. I leaned against the wall in the hallway, waiting for her to come down. Though I intended to wait, she spoke sooner than I expected. Really, how pathetic I am. Tears welled up in her eyes, and her voice trembled. Intubation in that state is difficult. It's understandable for a novice doctor with little experience not to manage it. It's about gaining experience from situations like this and improving. No matter how much you study and train to become a doctor, the actual field can differ significantly from the ideal. I, too, have felt this starkly in the past. But I couldn't do anything for him as he suffered. That's what frustrates me. The tears that had been welling up fell. Every doctor has their specialty. Even Dr. Wilson, an expert in pediatrics, would probably find neurosurgery challenging, and I doubt he can perform heart transplants. So don't beat yourself up. It's about finding your strengths going forward. I intended to comfort her with these words, but she was still crying. That might be true, but it's still frustrating. I can always make children smile more. Can I save the suffering ones? Maybe I really can't do anything after all. I regretted my words a bit, yet in situations like this, what's needed isn't advice. It's words that affirm the person who is feeling down. That's not true, Dr. Smith. I deliberately addressed her with a title, Doctor, to protect her dignity as a doctor, because I thought she might otherwise become self-critical. Your instructions were precise. Sending someone to call Dr. Wilson was the right decision. It's fair to say that your judgment saved Michael. After I spoke those words, she wiped her tears with a handkerchief and whispered a quiet thank you. At the same time, she nodded repeatedly as if savoring my words. Then she asked me a question. John, you were actually a doctor, right? A life-saving one at that. To perform such a difficult procedure flawlessly. Having somewhat recovered, she now seemed interested in my story. With such impressive skills, why do you choose to hide them and work in the store? As I spoke, her face, without me realizing it, brightened up. As usual, if I had to point out anything different, it would be that her eyes were bloodshot. I hesitated about whether to share my circumstances. I hadn't done anything wrong, nor did I have anything to hide. I was just afraid that talking about it might reopen my own wounds. But brooding over it forever wouldn't start anything new. Come with me. Deciding to open up, I asked her to follow me. Turning around, I started walking down the hallway. Her footsteps echoed as she followed behind me. We wove through the hospital, and I led us to a certain room. The room's lights were off. As we entered, I said, "This is a private room for a bed." An inpatient, right? Yes, as she said. A single girl slept by the window at the far end of the room. Only the light by the bedside was on, and 2 folding chairs were set up. You must be tired. This is going to be a long story. After prompting her to sit, she did so with a puzzled look. Then I turned to the sleeping girl and gently touched her face, placing my palm on her cheek. I stroked under her eye with my thumb. As expected, she showed no response. Amelia Taylor. Seeing the name on the wristband, she seemed to grasp what I was about to say. Could this child be yours? John Jess. Amelia, 3 years old. My daughter. She'd been in a coma since birth due to an accident during delivery. She's never opened her eyes, not even once. As I revealed the truth, she covered her mouth, a look of shock crossing her face. When Amelia was born, my wife, Emma, lost her life. She had a placental abruption, and an emergency surgery was required. The response was quick, but the uterus didn't contract, and she bled out. Amelia was deprived of oxygen, leaving her brain damaged and in a coma from the moment she was born. While Emma was fighting for her life, I was swamped with an entirely different task. I only learned of the severity of my wife's childbirth after everything had ended. At that time, I was a busy emergency medicine physician. That day, too, I was performing emergency surgery on a patient from a traffic accident. Phew, that was close. Yeah, John, you're as skilled as they say. I'm not really. It's all thanks to the support from my seniors. After the surgery, I had such conversations with the senior doctors, but the cheerful atmosphere suddenly changed. The sound of hurried footsteps approached, and then the door was flung open. A breathless nurse with tear-filled eyes looked at me. Dr. Taylor, please come quickly. I had been notified about entering the delivery room, so I was planning to head there soon, thinking casually that my child must have been born. However, her expression filled me with dread. Her face was far from celebratory. Following the nurse, I found Emma peacefully asleep. Her face was serene, showing no signs of distress. Holding her cold, white hand, I knelt down and wept loudly, a grown man crying unabashedly and shedding large tears. Emma, Emma. A large stain formed on the sheets. I shouted until my voice was hoarse, but she never woke up to chide me for being too loud. That day, the patient I was in charge of miraculously pulled through. I was thanked profusely by both the patient and their family, but I couldn't genuinely accept their gratitude. It wasn't that I couldn't accept my wife's passing. I just wished I could have fought alongside her until the end. I wasn't there for her final moments. She never got to see Amelia after she was born, and Amelia has never seen her parents or the world remaining asleep. Our family was torn apart, suspended in midair. Since then, my spirit was broken. I couldn't work as a doctor anymore. Amelia's primary physician became Dr. Rodriguez, a pediatrician and my mentor. I couldn't bear the thought of our family remaining divided. I decided to stay close to her by working at the hospital store. Thanks to Dr. Wilson's kindness, I'm allowed to stay overnight with her a few times a month. It just so happened that this coincided with the commotion involving Michael. I'm sorry for asking without knowing your situation. Dr. Smith, sitting next to me, fidgeted with an apologetic look. I was about to reassure her that it was okay, but she was the first to speak. But I want you to return to medicine, John. Excuse me? Her unexpected words took me by surprise. She then shared her past with me, looking downcast. John, I lost my best friend in an accident. They had plans for the next day and even for the upcoming holiday, but those plans never came to fruition. I wanted to reduce the number of people dying from sudden accidents. That's why I chose to become an emergency medicine doctor. Her usually gentle demeanor was filled with determination and strong emotion. But after the incident with Michael, I realized how inexperienced I still am. That's why. John. What? I was startled by her sudden approach and raised my voice unintentionally. It echoed down the hallway, likely causing a disturbance. I wish for you to return as a senior in emergency medicine. Please let me call you my master. Master. Her unexpected words left me astonished. Despite my shock, she continued, I've always felt a sense of urgency. Despite having lofty goals, my skills didn't match up. I was trying too hard to fit in to cover that up. To me, her behavior had always seemed natural. I thought it was just her being herself, but it seems I was mistaken. That's why I envy your skill, John. If you're willing to return to medicine. I'm sorry, Dr. Smith. Her words truly meant a lot to me, but the trauma from that day still held me back. I can't sort out my feelings yet. Is that so? But I won't give up. I'll keep asking you until you're sick of it, she declared emphatically. Weeks passed since that day. I was working as usual at the store, handling the queue of customers at the register when it happened. Whoa, what was that? A loud thump sounded. Unable to stop the register, I continued my work, albeit distracted. Did you hear that noise just now? Yes, it was quite the impact. I wonder what happened. That's the thing, you see. An older lady mentioned. There had been a traffic accident on the main road in front of the hospital. Apparently, a bus and a large truck had a head-on collision. Several compact cars were involved, turning it into a major disaster. Some people saw the victims being brought to this hospital. John, please, we need your help. We're short-staffed. Dr. Smith arrived at the store out of breath. Coincidentally, there were orthopedic, neurology, and cardiac surgery conferences today, so there were fewer doctors in the hospital. Wait, I have no time. Let's go. Hey, Dr. Smith. Despite my reluctance, she firmly dragged me to the scene. Just then, a college student working part-time arrived. Hey, take over the register, please. While instructing him, Dr. Smith led me away without further resistance. People were being brought in one after another, and the hospital was reaching its bed capacity. It felt like a battlefield, and I was genuinely shaken. John, perfect timing. I need you for the next patient. Daniel, a fellow emergency medicine doctor I used to work with. He was surprised to see me for a moment, but quickly got back to his duties after relaying what was needed. Instructions were thrown at me before I could even prepare myself. There was no time for second thoughts. My body moved on its own. In such circumstances, the patient brought in was a young pregnant woman. Her belly was significantly swollen, and a man was calling her name from a distance. This must be some kind of trial. Needless to say, the patient assigned to me was the pregnant woman. She had a laceration on her right arm from glass shards and seemed to have a fracture. Worst of all, there were signs of a severe blow to her abdomen. Immediate treatment and a C-section were needed to save both the mother and the child. Damn, why am I remembering this now? Emma's face flashed through my mind. Bound by that vision, I involuntarily stopped my emergency treatment. John, Dr. Smith, who had come to assist, snapped me out of it. Shaking off the distracting thoughts, I focused on treating the patient. I regained my composure and gave instructions to the nurses. We need to treat the arm and perform a C-section simultaneously. Get the obstetrician here. Yes, cries, groans, and shouts filled the air in the waiting area. Amidst all that, I found myself in an oddly quiet operating room, beginning to suture the pregnant woman's arm wound. It was a surgery where every second counted, a moment of intense urgency. My hands trembled with a familiar kind of anxiety I hadn't felt in a while, but I had no choice but to do what I could. Reassuring myself, I managed to make the final stitch. The bleeding stopped as the wound closed. The fracture seemed like it could be fixed with manual reduction. Relieved, I wiped the sweat from my forehead, and almost simultaneously, I heard a baby's first cry nearby. "The baby is born safely," the obstetrician announced. In the operating room, we burst into a collective relief. The patient's vital signs stabilized. Thank goodness. Amid the cheers, I quietly shed tears. The accident was caused by the truck driver falling asleep at the wheel. He had a chronic condition and had taken medication with drowsiness as a side effect. He's hospitalized in a local hospital now, receiving treatment. The pregnant woman I operated on is also on her way to recovery. Her baby was in the NICU, but was soon moved back to a regular ward. Though her dominant arm is broken, making childcare challenging, her husband seems kind, which is reassuring for now. While walking down the hallway with these thoughts, I happened to run into that family. The husband was holding the baby with his wife beside him. "Dear Taylor, that's you, isn't it?" "Yes, I'm John Taylor," I introduced myself. The couple's solemn faces lit up. Their baby was sleeping in the father's arms. "Thank you so much for everything. We'll never forget your kindness." "It's nothing. I was just doing my duty as a doctor," I said. Despite that, they kept thanking me over and over again. Seeing the lively couple, I felt proud to be a doctor. That night, the hospital had calmed down and returned to normal. In a room, I spoke to my sleeping princess. "That's what happened. Impressive, right? Daddy did well." Of course, there was no response. Suddenly feeling empty, I was reminded of the past, the funeral, dealing with relatives, and above all, the sorrow of loss that prevented me from celebrating Amelia's birth. This guilt was the main factor hindering my return. "Amelia, would you support me if I said I wanted to return to being a doctor?" I looked at my daughter. "Haha, your eyes and mouth are just like Emma's. I'm looking forward to the day you wake up." As I gently stroked her head, whispering to her, I caught a slight movement of her finger out of the corner of my eye. I grabbed her hand and called out, "Amelia, Amelia," but there was no response. Well, things don't work out that conveniently, do they? I was excited for a moment, but I quickly regained my composure and sat back down in the chair beside the bed. At a glance, her face seemed to be smiling. Eventually, I chose to return to emergency medicine. Dr. Smith, who calls me master despite my protests, Daniel always laughs, saying she's like a shadow following me around. "Daniel, JN is not a goldfish." That's right. He's an orca. Despite the collective virals, Dr. Smith doesn't seem to mind my working hours, and shifts are flexible due to Amelia, which I'm grateful for, but also feel guilty about. I intend to do my best with what I can. It seems like Amelia's hand movements have been increasing. Perhaps as I take steps forward, she is following suit. She can't walk or talk yet, but I always dream of going home with her someday. Recovery from despair takes time. How long it takes depends on the individual's mental state. Perhaps I've taken quite some time. For about 3 years, I had averted my eyes from my profession as a doctor, but I have recovered now. For Amelia's sake, I can't stay stagnant forever. What's lost won't return, but memories live on in the heart. Cherishing them, I vow to look forward with hope, remembering my wife's smile. That was my pledge. You broke loser, come on, at least put on a suit. Daniel laughed loudly and told me, don't tell me you don't own one. My classmates with whom I was remembering also appeared surprised. I do own a suit, I shot back, annoyed by Daniel's remark. Why I had to feel annoyed at what should have been a happy setting was beyond me. Daniel had always denigrated me. It was time for me to explain things to him. I had decided on something. Mike Jones is my name. I'm 30 years old. We relocated a lot when I was a kid because of my dad's work. We moved to the country when my dad was transferred once more while I was in the 7th grade. My dad told me with a smile, I'm sorry for another transfer, but at least it looks like this will be the last one. Being shy and introverted, I found changing schools to be difficult, but I was happy that it would be my final time. Although the middle school I transferred to was significantly smaller than the one I had attended before, I was thrilled about the new life ahead, and all of my classmates were friendly. One individual, though, didn't think highly of me. Daniel Rickley was that person. Hey, nerd, don't spend all of your time studying. Daniel would constantly make fun of me. I was just copying notes. Stop talking. Don't respond, particularly if you don't even have a mother. Daniel raised his voice to scare me. When I was young, my mother died of illness. I wished there was some way I could speak with her, but there was no way. Hey, Daniel, don't say things like that. My peers frequently defended me when I appeared depressed, but that only seemed to make Daniel less amused, and he kept taunting me until we graduated from middle school. He would say, you must have cheated, right? Whenever I did well on an exam. That's a false start. He said when I, as a member of the track team, recorded an excellent time. Try it again. Daniel didn't like me at all. I avoided him throughout middle school. Exams for high school admittance was a turning moment in my life. I purposefully picked a high school near my middle school since I had heard reports that Daniel was attending a different out-of-state institution. I thought I'd be free from Daniel. That was all I was thinking. Just as I wished, we went to different high schools, and I no longer had to deal with Daniel. I felt an indescribable sense of relief. I made new friends in high school and enjoyed my life there. I joined the track team again and spent my after-school hours working up a good sweat together with my teammates. It was a truly fulfilling and fun time, unlike my middle school days. After enjoying my high school life, I got a job at a sewing factory right after graduating. Though I wanted to go to college, I didn't want to burden my dad, who raised me on his own, any further. My dad had said it was okay for me to go to college, but I turned down the offer and started working at the factory instead. The job I landed was at a sewing factory for an apparel company. It wasn't that I had any particular interest in clothes, but this factory was the only place willing to hire someone with just a high school diploma like me. Until I got this job, I had never even touched a sewing machine, much less knew anything about making clothes. However, my bosses and coworkers taught me everything kindly and patiently. 5 years into the job, I had finally learned all the tasks in the factory. Hey, Mike, I can't get this right. Oh, let me do it. I think you should do it like this. I see. You've been impressive lately. I need to work harder, my senior coworker, Harper, said with a laugh. I, who didn't have any special qualities, had become knowledgeable in sewing. My colleagues depended on me. Life was fulfilling. Until that day. That day, something happened. I went to the factory as usual and was planning what to do that day with Harper. Suddenly, the entrance got noisy. "Is there something special happening today?" I asked Harper. She also looked confused. "Our boss said today there's supposed to be an important deal." I turned my gaze toward the factory entrance, and there he was. Daniel. The last person I wanted to see. I rubbed my eyes and looked again, but it was definitely Daniel. Why is he here? I kept my head down and continued working quietly. "Thank you for coming all this way." "Well, it's an important deal, of course." The boss was fawning over Daniel. Then, I could hear Daniel's voice getting closer to where I was. And when I finally looked up, Daniel was standing right in front of me, looking at me and laughing. He had found me. I had a bad feeling. "You're working here. I heard you started working right after high school, but in a factory. That's hilarious." I ignored his words and kept working. Then, the boss, looking surprised, spoke to Daniel. "You know each other. Mike has been working hard and has become a vital part of this factory." Daniel suddenly started laughing again. "This guy is a vital part. Back in middle school, he was a complete failure, always causing trouble for everyone. I can't believe it." Daniel's words caused the boss's face to harden. Harper, who was working next to me, looked at Daniel with a puzzled expression. "A failure, you say?" "Yes, really. Right, Mike?" Daniel suddenly turned to me. Annoyed, I said, "I didn't cause trouble for anyone. Can't you stop spouting nonsense?" Daniel's face became slightly angry. "I'm not spouting nonsense. You've been a failure since back then. How dare you talk back to me?" I was at a loss for words. Then Daniel said something shocking. "Sir, if you want to do business with my company, you'll have to fire this guy. If he's here, I'm sure the company won't do well. He's a jinx." Suddenly, the factory fell silent. My colleagues looked at Daniel with shocked faces. The boss took a deep breath and then said to Daniel, "Well, let's have some tea over there," and led him to the office. I couldn't understand what right he had to try and get me fired. Daniel has always been someone who tries to get his way in everything. As I sighed, Harper looked at me with concern. "Don't worry about what that person says. He's truly unpleasant." Harper offered me kind words while we worked. "He's always disliked me. He just wants to make me suffer this time too. Over the past 5 years, I've worked hard and sweated it out in this factory, and the boss knows it. Even if Daniel, the client representative, requested my firing, I was confident the boss would never let me go. However, that confidence was shattered that evening. The boss asked me to come to his office. Having never been called by the boss before, I entered the office, puzzled. The boss seemed a bit down, and he began to speak. "Mike, I'm really sorry, but could you take a break from work until the deal with Taya Corporation is finalized?" "Excuse me?" I couldn't believe my ears. I never expected to hear something like this from the boss. He continued, "You understand how important the contract with Taya Corporation is to our company, right? Taya Corporation is a well-known company in the apparel industry, renowned to the point where nobody in this field hasn't heard of them. I remembered Harper mentioning that this deal could involve hundreds of millions of dollars. Yes. Apparently, Daniel has taken a dislike to you. If that causes us to lose the contract, it would be a huge loss for the company. But I don't want to fire you because you've been working so hard. Could you just take a break for a while? I'd like to pretend to fire you." All I could do was nod to the boss's desperate words. I couldn't understand why I, who hadn't done anything wrong, had to take a break from work. But for the sake of the boss and the company, I had no choice but to comply with his request. For a week, I stayed at home. I was unable to focus on anything. I hoped the work I was responsible for was okay with Harper handling it. Then Harper called me. There was some work she couldn't figure out. I tried to explain over the phone, but when I couldn't convey it well, I reluctantly headed to the factory. I sneaked into the factory and approached Harper. "Mike, I'm really sorry for bothering you during your time off," Harper said in a quiet, apologetic voice. Making sure not to be seen by other coworkers, I quietly showed her how to do the work. She seemed to understand and thanked me. As I was about to leave the factory without anyone noticing, an incident occurred. At the entrance was Daniel. He looked surprised, then raised his voice. "Why are you here? Weren't you fired? Damn it." I involuntarily stepped back, hearing his voice. The boss came out of his office, looking troubled. "Mike, I just came back for something I forgot. I lied to Daniel on the spot." Daniel scoffed at me and said, "See, you're bothering everyone. There's no place for a high school graduate like you to get employed anywhere. Get out of here if you understand." The boss nearby just silently watched, saying nothing. What have I done to Daniel? I was sick of his behavior. At that moment, something inside me snapped. "Daniel, why do you always have to be against me? I haven't done anything to you." Unable to hold back any longer, I raised my voice. The factory coworkers looked at me with concern, especially Harper, who seemed about to run over to me with a worried expression. Daniel, unfazed by my words, roared, "I hate you because you haven't put in any effort at all. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to get to where I am today? Meanwhile, you, with just a high school diploma, are breezing through an easy job. You think I haven't put in any effort. Give me a break. Do you have any idea how hard I've worked at this factory?" Daniel burst out laughing. Anyone can work in a factory, can't they? No matter how hard I tried to talk to him, I couldn't get through. That's when I realized it was just a waste of time to continue this conversation. I walked out of the place. Even after I had left, Daniel continued to laugh. As I ran, I made a decision. A few days later, I called the boss and told him I was resigning. I thought I shouldn't cause any more trouble for the company because of my presence. The boss tried desperately to stop me, but my mind was made up. After that, I started job hunting. But it was frustrating not being able to find the next job right away. However, my father said, "You've worked hard until now, so it's okay to take a break. Life is long. A little rest won't hurt." Inspired by my father's words, I spent a year doing what I wanted. Having worked earnestly for 5 years, I had more than enough savings. I'll take my time finding the next job, I thought. When the time came, I smoothly landed my next job. Then I began working hard again. 6 more years passed, and I was now 30. My job was going well, and I was living peaceful days. One day, I arranged to meet Mason, a middle school classmate, at a cafe for the first time in a long while. Mason was my best friend during middle school. Since we went to the same high school, we remained close and occasionally met up to share updates after graduating. Now, Mason works for a multinational company, traveling all over the world. I was delighted when he wanted to meet. "Hey, long time no see." Mason greeted me cheerfully. "It's been 2 years since we last met before you went abroad," I said. Reuniting with Mason brought back memories, and our conversation flowed easily. "Hey, why don't you come to the reunion?" he suddenly asked. I was puzzled. "A reunion? I didn't get an invitation." "Didn't you get one about a month ago? This time, Daniel and I were organizing it, and Daniel said you wouldn't be attending," Mason explained. It was news to me. I hadn't received any invitation. It seemed Daniel had intentionally not sent me one, not wanting me at the reunion. "I didn't get any invitation. Daniel probably didn't send it to me on purpose," I said. Mason was surprised. "Is that so? I thought you just didn't want to attend the reunion. He's the worst. Mason said angrily while sipping his coffee. Daniel being unpleasant isn't just a recent thing, actually. I told Mason everything that had happened 6 years ago. He looked at me incredulously. I'm at a loss for words. That such a thing happened to you, he said. Yeah, I figured. But I am who I am today because of him, so I've let bygones be bygones. Indeed, Daniel was unpleasant. But thanks to him, I was able to grow stronger. Without him, I might have remained a person with little self-confidence and no particular quality forever. Over the last 6 years, I came to think this way. What about the reunion? Daniel will be there too. Want to skip it? Mason asked, considering my feelings. I laughed. Since we're here, I'll attend. Mason smiled happily. Honestly, I was a bit afraid of meeting Daniel. He would probably just insult me again. But I am not the same person I was 6 years ago. I decided to attend the reunion with pride. After promising to meet at the reunion, we parted ways to go home. I was truly grateful to Mason. If I hadn't met him today, I would never have known about the reunion. Thinking of the classmates I would meet after a long time, I headed home. On the day of the reunion, I wore a new shirt. Seeing that, my dad asked, "Aren't you going to wear a suit to the reunion? Isn't it at a 3-star hotel?" He looked at me worriedly. It was understandable for him to be concerned. A 3-star hotel, as the venue meant I had to dress appropriately. But I didn't want to wear a suit on my day off. That's why I prepared a shirt that's casual but suitable for a 3-star hotel. I reassured him. It'll be fine. He still looked worried. But that Daniel guy will be there, right? Won't he make snide remarks again? I had told him everything that happened 6 years ago. He still harbored resentment toward Daniel, seemingly holding a grudge. I reassured him. Even if he makes snide remarks, it's okay. I don't care anymore. I smiled. Seeing my smile, Dad seemed reassured and didn't say anything more. I left the house, looking forward to reuniting with my old classmates. I felt light on my feet. Entering the 3-star hotel, I was greeted by a grand chandelier and a glamorous atmosphere. Filled with anticipation, I made my way to the hotel's restaurant. "Mike, thanks for coming." Mason ran over to me, looking happy. "Hey, I'm so excited about today," I said, smiling naturally just by talking to him. We entered the restaurant. The restaurant was booked exclusively for the reunion, and a lavish spread of food was laid out. Even though the reunion hadn't officially started, many of my old classmates were already there, engaged in lively conversations. Seeing me, my classmates approached with cries of joy. "Mike, it's been so long, since middle school graduation. It's so nostalgic." My classmates approached me cheerfully. We were engaged in endless conversations about the silly and funny stories from our middle school days. Before I knew it, the reunion had started, and my classmates began to gather around one after another. "Daniel has really made something of himself, hasn't he?" a classmate suddenly said. "What's so great about him?" I asked, genuinely curious. The classmate quickly explained. "He's apparently the sales manager at TA Corporation." To Corporation, as in that big company. Daniel was always smart, wasn't he? He's the most successful among us, and he's even pushing forward deals with that major apparel manufacturer. So Daniel became a manager right after I left my previous job. Well, it's none of my business. As I was thinking this, the entrance to the restaurant became even noisier. Oh, speak of the devil. There was Daniel, dressed in a fine suit. I involuntarily looked away. Daniel didn't know I was attending this reunion. In fact, he had intended not to invite me. I thought he would freak out if he found out I was here. I looked at Mason, and, in a low voice, he told me, "You haven't done anything wrong. Just stand tall and proud." Mason's words eased my mind a bit. I shouldn't care about Daniel at all. "Thanks, Mason," I said, and continued our conversation. But soon, Daniel spotted me and looked as if he had seen a ghost, probably not expecting me to be here. He raised his voice. Why are you here? You weren't invited. Daniel's face turned red with anger. Mason invited me to the reunion. If it's a middle school reunion, I have every right to attend, don't I? Daniel reacted immediately to my words. I don't consider you my classmate. It's presumptuous of you to come to the reunion without my permission. Hearing Daniel's words, the surrounding classmates began to murmur. This is not the place for you. Geez, how long will he keep insulting me before he's satisfied? I was utterly exhausted. So you'll be satisfied if I leave? Daniel scoffed. Yeah, that's right. Now get out of here. And that outfit. It's totally out of place here, isn't it? I had managed to talk a bit with the classmates I wanted to, and thought it might be best to leave as he suggested. Then he added insultingly, wear a suit at least, you pathetic thing. Don't tell me you don't own one. I was speechless. What is he even talking about? I do own a suit. I just didn't want to wear one on my day off. Daniel laughed even more at my words. I couldn't understand what was so funny. Don't act all tough. You didn't have the money to buy a suit, did you? You never owned one in the first place, did you? Admit it. You're broke. I was shocked by his rudeness. There was nothing more to talk about. I was about to leave the place, but he uttered words I couldn't forgive. Hey, should I give you one of my old suits? It's more expensive than you could ever afford in your lifetime. Although I was frustrated inside, I pretended to listen calmly. If you want to wear suits like mine, try getting a job at a renowned company like I did. Though that's impossible for someone incompetent like you. I reached my breaking point. I couldn't understand why he had to go that far. Just as I was about to raise my voice, Mason shouted, Mike doesn't need your hand-me-down suits. I was shocked. Mason had always been gentle, and I had never seen him shout. That Mason was raising his voice for me. I was so surprised that I almost dropped my drink. Daniel, taken aback, glared at Mason. Hand-me-downs? This suit is from KG Industries, the major suit manufacturer my company is about to deal with. Not something a poor person like Mike could easily afford. Daniel, unfortunately, could you cancel that deal? The room seemed to go silent for a moment. What? Daniel acted as if he hadn't heard me. No helping it. I repeated the same words. I'm asking if you could cancel the deal between your company and mine. The room fell silent. What are you talking about? My company has no deal with you. Do you really not recognize my face? You know nothing, do you? I couldn't help but question Daniel, but he just laughed. What's with that tone? You're Mike the incompetent, right? There's no other option. I realized it was pointless to talk to Daniel and handed him my business card. Sorry for the late introduction. I'm Mike, the president of KG Industries. I mistakenly made a contract to create a collaborative product with your company, but I'd like it to be annulled. What? President of KG Industries. Daniel's face turned pale. Seeing Daniel's reaction, Mason said, That's why I told you he doesn't need your suit. He has plenty without yours, and burst into laughter. Yes, I am the president of the major suit manufacturer, KG Industries. Becoming president was triggered by the incident 6 years ago. After quitting my job, I struggled to find new work. Luckily, I had savings, so I decided to take it easy for a while and made a suit for my father on a whim. My father wore suits to work every day, and I wanted to make a stylish suit for him. The suit was quickly finished, and when I gave it to my father, he was delighted, making me feel proud. My father wore the suit I made to work the very next day. That evening, he asked me if I could make 2 more suits. Apparently, his colleagues wanted one after seeing my father's suit. Of course, I made suits for his colleagues too. Then, the next day, someone else requested one. This cycle continued, and the demand for my suits grew. A month later, I was swamped with orders for dozens of suits. I was surprised that a suit I made on a whim became so popular. Seeing this, my father suggested, "Why don't you start a company, GED? If I could manufacture suits in a factory, I could sell them immediately without making customers wait." Inspired, I decided to establish the company. Starting a business required a substantial amount of money, and I even took out loans. But the demand for my unique and stylish suits never ceased, and my company quickly grew. Just 6 years after founding my company, it went public and became a suit maker so famous that nobody didn't know who we were. One day, I got a direct call from the president of TA Corporation. He wanted to collaborate with my company to create a new product. Collaborating with a major apparel company like TA Corporation would only increase my company's fame. The president of TA Corporation was very enthusiastic, even saying he'd spare no expense for the collaboration. Memories of trouble with an employee from TA Corporation, Daniel, crossed my mind, but I decided to focus on the company and went ahead with the deal. However, knowing that Daniel was still an employee at TA Corporation, I started to feel I couldn't continue the deal. I didn't want anything to do with someone so disrespectful. When Daniel found out I was the president of KG Industries, he started apologizing to me, sweating bullets. "I had no idea you were the president. Please forgive me." I ignored him and tried to leave the venue. He followed me and blocked my path. "Hey, I'm sorry. It was my fault. It was too late for apologies." I sighed. "It's too late. I won't forgive you." Then Daniel shouted, "We're friends, aren't we? How can you be so cold? If the president finds out this deal fell through because of me, I'll be fired. Are you okay with that?" Daniel was acting arrogantly even then. I took out my smartphone and called someone. Daniel just watched, puzzled. "Hello. I'm sorry, but let's cancel this deal." "What? What do you mean?" "Your employee Daniel's attitude is too much. I can't go through with the contract." The person I called was the president of TA Corporation. Knowing I was talking to the president, Daniel started to panic and fell to his knees. "What? I'll remove Daniel from the project. Please reconsider." "No, I've made up my mind," I said and hung up the phone. Daniel realized it was futile and just sat there in silence. I looked down at him. "I have one last question." Daniel stayed silent, but I continued. "I need to know, why did you always look down on me? Didn't you think it was cruel, considering I never did anything to you?" Daniel answered in a small voice. "I was jealous. You succeeded at everything without any particular effort, while I had to struggle. Only the person themselves knows how much effort and hardship they've gone through. It's terrible that you treated me so poorly because of that. Reflect on how much you've hurt me," I said and left the venue with Mason. Daniel seemed to be crying pitifully for a long time. Mason and I left the venue with clear faces. Finally, I could say what I wanted to Daniel. "Mason, thanks," I said, thanking him for being there for me. Mason smiled awkwardly and said, "We're friends, Scar. Of course, I'd do this much." Later, the president of TA Corporation and Daniel came to apologize to my company. "We're very sorry for the disrespectful behavior of our employee Daniel. We'll reassign him to a regional office for reflection. Please forgive us." The president apologized deeply. Next to him, Daniel was also apologizing sincerely. "I'm very sorry for my past actions and will make sure not to behave that way again." I sighed and looked at my secretary, Harper. In a soft voice, she whispered, "He seems genuinely remorseful. Maybe it's okay to forgive him this time." Daniel was surprised by her presence. "You were there at that time?" "Yes. When I started this company, I had invited Harper to join because I knew she would be a great support, and I wanted to work with her. Moreover, Harper and I had gotten married, becoming husband and wife." "My husband always appreciates your help," Harper said politely. Following that, the president of TA Corporation and I continued our discussion and decided to proceed with the deal. As the president said, Daniel was reassigned to a regional office and never appeared before me again. In his new position, he seemed to have changed his attitude completely, dedicating himself to his work. I hope he continues to live without causing trouble for others. The brand we co-developed with TA Corporation became a massive hit. We sold millions, generating millions of dollars in profit for my company. I realized that without Harper's words, none of this would have happened. I can't thank her enough. Moving forward, I plan to make this company even better and ensure Harper's happiness.